So this morning we had an interesting Nintendo Direct that was a game-specific Direct for Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now, Donkey Kong Bonanza will be coming out on July 17th, and I was already sold on this game. I feel like most people are already sold on this game simply because of the fact that, well, if you own a Nintendo Switch 2, like, you're probably looking forward to whatever's coming out in the future. I don't think the Nintendo Switch 2 had the greatest launch of all time in terms of games, like a lot of people do. I think it was pretty solid, but I'm definitely looking forward to whatever Nintendo has for their next generation hardware. And Donkey Kong Bonanza, from what we had seen so far, definitely looked really good. It looked like a no-brainer to pick up, but I'll say, after watching this Nintendo Direct for Donkey Kong Bonanza, I am much more sold on the game. I think the game kind of surprised me a little bit from the perspective of, it seemed like it was just going to be a standard 3D platforming adventure that you'd probably go through in a weekend and something like that, and then revisit it as you want to. But I think there's a lot more depth into this game than I expected with it. And so I was pleasantly surprised with this Nintendo Direct. They, of course, showed off, different gameplay mechanics, how everything sort of works, the story setting of the game, which, I mean, it's fine. But one of the big additions to the game is young Pauline. So I guess in like a hierarchy of taking place in certain time frames, this happens like before the original Donkey Kong game, because Pauline is very young in this game, whereas Jumpman was saving a older Pauline in those games. So, Nintendo and their timelines, people like to try and make Hyrule timelines and stuff like that. This is where this Zelda game goes, and Nintendo's always like, hey, we just kind of make these games, and if they coincide with other ones, that's cool. But, for the most part, there's not a definitive timeline. I guess now Donkey Kong will have a timeline like that. But Pauline is basically like your sidekick character throughout the game. She can help you throughout the game. She actually does play an important role throughout the gameplay. Most of the environments that they showed off for this game, I thought looked really good. The graphics obviously look great. It kind of has that Mario Kart World style. And like I said in my video on Mario Kart World and subsequent Nintendo Switch 2 related videos, like, I can't wait for like the platformers and stuff to come along that use this visual style, because it's honestly a very nice visual style that they're able to do with the additional hardware of the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, of course, you have your various cameos from different characters within the Donkey Kong universe, both old and new characters. Cranky Kong and the Rhino was in there. People saw Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong. I guess Diddy got out of jail to star in this game in the background as well. So that'll be interesting to see how they sort of play into the game itself. There are the different levels that you go into. Everything is destructible in this game, which I think is very, very cool. Like, you could kind of create your own path with the game in order to traverse into other areas and whatnot. That's kind of one of the selling points of it. You can use different pieces of the environment to go and do different things and stuff. Very nicely done. It's kind of interesting to see an engine like this for a first-party Nintendo game, because destruction has never really been something that Nintendo has hyper-fixated on in any of their platformer games ever since they've been making platformer games. So I do feel like it will be a bit different. Now, there is a two-player mode where one person can control Pauline and her singing abilities and stuff like that. There's also game share, where you can share it to another Nintendo Switch 2 or a Nintendo Switch 1, and one person can be Pauline and one person can be Donkey Kong. It looks like they are trying to do something with the game share functionality, and, even including the Nintendo Switch 1 users that still have their system, or people who haven't upgraded, so they can get a little bit of a taste of what the Nintendo Switch 2 has to offer. So the main game itself, like, looks great. Like, I was already sold on that, but I'm more so sold on it now. But I think it's all of the other stuff that is included in this game that really makes it stand out. It definitely has like a Mario Odyssey vibe. You remember in Mario Odyssey, there was all those hidden moons and stuff that you can do. Well, there's lots of stuff like that in Donkey Kong Bonanza, and I think that's a good thing. You know, that's going to increase the replay value, make people want to play the game longer because they're going to be searching for these hidden things that are found high and low within the game. They also showed off some different variations of gameplay. There's actually like 2D segments in the game as well, which is pretty cool. You know, I think the minecart stuff in 2D is definitely very nostalgic for a lot of people. But even just like beyond that, like there's so much to the game. There's different skins that you can equip for Donkey Kong. There's like a skill tree system that you can trade in items for to upgrade Donkey Kong and his abilities and make him stronger in certain areas and stuff like that. Of course, you have things like boss battles. There's like a weird mode that's kind of like Mario Paint-esque where you like chisel stuff out of stone by using the mouse and whatnot. Like, this feels like a very complete and robust game where I initially figured that this was just going to be, you know, a solid 3D platformer with some stuff to do, some additional stuff. But, you know, as a launch window title, it probably wouldn't hit the same sort of metrics that Super Mario Odyssey did because of the fact that, you know, that's Mario. Mario is probably a bigger character for Nintendo than Donkey Kong is. But I honestly feel like this is a game that could potentially surprise a lot of people. It definitely feels way more robust than I thought it was going to, and I'm glad for that. Like, I think with this launch window of lineup of games for the Nintendo Switch 2, like, you got to kind of think outside the box a little bit and add that additional value, especially when we're talking about a $70 game, because this is a standard $70 game for the system. Now, there's also some new Amiibo that are coming, and there's old Amiibo support as well. So if you're still holding on to Amiibo or want to pay a lot of money for these new Amiibo that are coming out, hey, you know what? You can do it. The game does support it. But overall, I was definitely very surprised with this. You know, my expectations for the game were pretty middle of the road, I felt. You know, I expected a solid 3D platforming experience, but I definitely didn't expect all of the bells and whistles of this game to, like, be existing. You know, I didn't think they would kind of go the extra mile, because you can always use the excuse, oh, it's a launch game or something like that. You know, the next Mario will be bigger and badder and better than this game. But now it's almost like I feel like the next 3D Mario platformer is actually put on a higher plateau now. I think the expectations for that game are going to be higher than ever before, just because of how much Donkey Kong Bonanza has to offer in terms of different types of gameplay, in terms of replay value, in terms of collectibles. And I get it, you know, not everyone's going to want 100% complete the game or get all of the hidden stuff in there, but at least there is that incentive to go back and check it out, you know, if you want to. If you have some downtime and you're waiting for another game to come out, you do know that there is content within the game that you haven't found or haven't accessed yet. So I'm really looking forward to this game. You know, I was definitely buying it on day one, regardless of anything, just because I'm looking forward to playing new things on the Nintendo Switch 2. But I think this game is actually going to be a lot more successful and a lot more critically received, highly critically received than I initially thought. And I mean, I can't complain about that. The more content, the merrier, and it all feels organic within this game. So those are my thoughts on the Donkey Kong Bonanza Nintendo Direct presentation. Better than I expected. I did wake up a little bit late. I woke up at like 6:30 this morning for some reason. I kind of fell asleep early last night, and I went back to bed. I was like, oh, I'll wake up and catch it live, but I definitely woke up at like 9:06, so I had to watch the video on fast mode of it. But pleasantly surprised by this. Let me know in the comments section down below, though, what did you think about the Nintendo Direct for Donkey Kong Bonanza. Were you on the fence about this game? Did this help solidify your purchase? If you weren't buying it, are you going to buy it now? Or do you even own a Nintendo Switch 2? And while that was satisfying, I must say, I still am looking forward to a standard Nintendo Direct. I hope we get one, and I hope that it happens before I leave for Philadelphia next week for Too Many Games, which happens not this upcoming weekend, but next weekend. Don't screw me here, Nintendo. Well, we will have some problems. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.